Hello guys, so welcome to your last tutorial for the Python info training. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about something a bit more interesting than what we'll be talking about. Yeah, it has always been interesting. Okay, so today we're going to be running you guys through what we call imports. You know, as you move on in your journey with the Python language, you're going to be needing a lot of libraries to do some certain things. Okay, so what if um, you come across a library called NumPy, and you're told to use NumPy for a certain project? How are you going to use that library in Python? So that's exactly what we want to put you guys through. So um, for example, let's say you want to use a library called whatever library you want to use them in Python. If you've truly picked for you to have them, if they are not libraries that came by default with your Python programming, with your Python idle, it's best to just go ahead to your command line and then do pip install. Um, you do pip install the name of the library. So if it is NumPy, you do pip install NumPy, and you have to have your internet connection on for you to be able to get that done. Alright, so once we've done that, then you can use the library wherever you are on your laptop. Alright, so um, for example, you can just say, let's say you've installed NumPy, then you can use the import NumPy. Do you get it? And you can use it for whatever you want to use it for. Now, this is how you import a library in Python. So you use the import first, then the name of the library you want to import in Python. So in this case, I just want to import the library called math because I just want to demonstrate some things for you in math. So this is generally the way you import things in library, but there are some times whereby you see something like import math as MA, or the name of the library or whatever, like you can just say import numpy as np. So they are basically trying to say, okay, um, I don't want to just use this thing, it's a bit long. I would just want to use a short form to represent numpy. So you're basically trying to assign this um, class numpy as an object to a variable called np. So in this case, np is more or less like an object of numpy. It's more or less like saying you are doing something like np is equals to numpy. This is basically what it means, but you know, yeah, that's basically what it means. So import np as numpy, but in this case, let's just do import maths. All right. So there are some other times whereby you can just see import. You can see something like from math import all. So when you see star like this, it means that every function, module, package, whatever that is in this under this package math or module math or class math or method, any of them, we want you to import everything. So, so for example, yeah, so that's basically what it means. That's basically what it means. So, instead of you trying to say from math, um, from math, import course, import copy sign, um, import fabs, import floor, import factorial, and the likes. Whereby you now start taking them one by one after the other. You can just say import all those functions in mathematics that I need. I just wanted to import everything. So it's all the same thing. If you run this, it's still going to be fine. All right, so let's go to our editor to just do some to do a bit of some maths. So let's do import maths. All right, import maths. So if you look at it, if you don't get any error after this, then of course you shouldn't get an error because by default, once you install Python, you have maths installed. All right, so let's try and do some. We did something called we did class, introduction to class. So um, you guys should be able to understand. You can either say, or let's just say, let's do import math as MMA, right? So you can say MMA. Now, the math is actually a package with so many variables. Yeah, so many variables. All right. So just a bit of some of the things that you have in maths is the ceil function, CIL. Now, the ceil function is basically it returns the ceil of whatever integer you pass, of what or precisely whatever float you take in, pass into this function. So if I say the ceil of 23.7 is what? It says 24, so it rounds off um, the number to its nearest um, whole number. So if I say the ceil of 23.3 is what? So it rounds it up to the nearest to the next value, not to the, it's different from the round function, which is 23.3. So, oh, math doesn't have round. So the round function. All right. So we have um, a keyword. I'm going to be talking about some other keyword arguments like that. So um, the math function doesn't have attribute round. So let me just talk about this. Um, the round function is actually an inbuilt function. As you can see, it's a bit green. So if you say the round dot 23, it says 23. All right. So there's also another one in our what do you call it, in our maths module called the floor. Yeah, the floor. So if you say floor dot 24.5, so what do we have? It says 24. All right. So it says 24. So what exactly is the floor also doing? It returns the floor of x, that is um, the largest integer uh, less than equals to whatever integer that you pass into this. So because it's either the integer, it's either the it's either um, it returns what they call it, um, an integer. It returns an integer that is either greater than this number that you have here, or equal to this number. It either returns 24, or it returns 24.5. But because it always return an integer, that's because we pass in a float and it also always return an integer. That's the reason why we have it this way. But if you say floor 34, it's still gonna be 34. Do you get it? So integer to integer. But if it is a float, it's gonna um, um, return the integer of that number. So do you get it? Or we can just try floor. Let's try and see 24.3. It's still gonna return the integer of that number. So if you say MMA MMA floor 24.9, it's still going to return. So it's always going to return the integer of that float. All right. There's a lot of functions in Python, the maths module. So we have the um, okay, there maths. So in the maths function, we have a lot of methods like the a cos, a cosh, a sine, a sine, a tan. So you can do a lot of things like the factorial, the absolute value. So you can say m a dot f abs. The absolute value of minus 45 is what? It says 45.0. So you can say MMA factorial. For those of you that like factorial, all right. So it says what's the factorial of 4? So it says 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 is 24. So you can do a lot of other things: the sine, the cosine, the sqrt, MMA dot sqrt 25, or let's say sqrt 45. What's the square root of 45? It says 6.708. All right. So let me just quickly talk about the let me just quickly, okay, let's just say MMA dot the sign. So now in this case, if you do it this way and you say, let's say you want to do sine 90, uh, I would not advise, if if it's square sine 90 is not 0.9 whatever. So what this guy actually takes in is radian. So you have to write it this way: sine MMA radian, um, 90. So what is sine 90? Sorry, radian, not MMA dot MMA dot sine into bracket MMA dot radians 90. So you have to be very careful of your spelling. So sine 90 is 1. So you can go ahead to do the same thing for what they call it, um what they call it, your cos, your tan and the likes, your cosh and others. So that's all about imports, imports and imports. So in your script here, you can go ahead to do um, a lot of importing, like x is equals to um, sqrt 45. You know, the reason why I'm using sqrt 45 here is because I said import all. So because I've imported all, it means that when I run sqrt 45 now, it should understand that yes, I'm referring to the maths module. But it's always good, a good practice, you import things like from math, import, give it a an object name like AB. Do you get it? Such that you can now say AB dot, because there are sometimes whereby you have to do a lot of import this from this, import this from this, import that. And if the functions the modules you are trying to call over and over have the same, have similar um, methods, there's going to be a little bit of some form of conflict on which module you're actually trying to run. So if you run this guy, um, so it says cannot import name AB from math unknown location. Oh, sorry, that was a mistake. So it should be so from imports is not in from, is import maths as AB. So when you run this guy, um, oh, it didn't print out anything. So let's print. So let's say print x. So F5, then boom. Yeah, so that's just going to be all about importing and importing and importing. So a quick one, let's quickly talk about some inbuilt functions in Python. Inbuilt functions in Python. So I would the first one I would love to talk about is the um, ABS. Yeah, absolute function. So when you see something like this, ABS, of course, inbuilt functions are always functions colored in, should I call, yeah, purple. So ABS, um, ABS is actually an inbuilt function that takes in any integer or float. It will always return whatever you pass in as an integer. So for example, let's say you say minus 45. It says, what's the absolute value of minus 45? The absolute value of minus 45 is 45. What's the absolute value of 35? The absolute value of 35 is 35. Alright, so that would be that regarding absolute value. So let's talk about the all function. So the all function is also an inbuilt function in Python, and then it takes in an iterable. So what it does is that it checks if every information in that every entry in your iterable is valid. If it is valid, then it's going to return a true. If not, it's not going to return a true. It's going to return a false. So let's just say, let's pass in 23. 23 is a valid, whatever. 12 is also valid, is a string. Um, 67 is 67 is also valid. Alright. So because this is a list and a list is an iterable, so it's going to say it's true. So but let's try and see if we say 34 um, 34, of course this is actually going to return an error because name is not defined. So 12, um, yeah, name is not defined, so it's going to return an error. So okay, let's do this way. Let's say name is um okay, let's not bother, so that's just it. Once the inputs, because we already, our time is already fast spent and there's still a lot of things to talk about, so that'll be all about all. So let's talk about the next one, which is any. Any is also the same thing, very similar to all. So it returns if the function, if every whatever you have in your list is valid, so it's just going to return a true. So if you do the same thing, sorry, name, I copied the wrong guy, so let's copy the right guy. Okay, it's always good if you have all these red errors. That's to show that yes, you're actually learning something. Yeah. But the most important thing is getting it corrected. Yeah. So the next one I would also love to talk about is the bin, bin. All these things I'm talking about, they are all keywords. You can't use them as your variable. It's not right to say bin is equals to list, lists, um, um, 23, 45, blah 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 blah, and the likes. No, it's wrong. You don't use a keyword argument as your variable name. Alright, so bin, now the bin is actually it returns the binary equivalent of every integer. For example, let's say you want to say what's the um, binary value of 23, of 23. So it says 10111. So that's the binary of 23. 10111. You can always ignore this 0b. This 0b means it's binary. It's a binary value, it's not just any value. So 10111 is the binary value of 23. So that's that regarding bin. So the next one I would love to talk about is the enumerate. Yeah, is the enumerate. So the enumerate is kind of more or less like a method that adds counting to an iterable. So that's just basically what it does. So it always returns an enumeration object. So enumerate. So if you look at enumerate, yeah, so it takes in an iterable. So you can just have it takes in an iterable. Yeah, so let's just say you have for counts, let's say you have an iterable called name, um, 23, 45, 34, 12, right? So you can say for count comma item in enumerate name. So it's going to give you print count comma item. So you look at this. So it gives um, it takes the item, which is all of this, right, and then it assign a count to them. So this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3. All right, so the next one I would love to talk about is the zip. All right, so is the zip. So um, zip is also an inbuilt keyword argument in Python, and what it does is it takes in two different iterables of the same length. So if you have x is equals to a um, b c d. All right, so it takes, now since name is having four lengths, this is also having four lengths, so I can say for count comma item in zip. So just look at it as you trying to zip two things together, x comma name. So let's say print count comma item. Now in this case, count is basically referring to x, which is each of the words here, and then item is referring to uh, name, which is each of the words here. So it's going to be printing A 23, B 45, C 34, D 12. So that's that regarding the zip. Okay, so what other thing have I not touched? Um, um, yeah, the map function, then the filter function. So like I said, the map function is also a keyword argument. So it's best I just switch to my editor so I can just make this more interesting. All right, so yeah, so the map function is something very interesting. So you let's say you have a function called um, let's say you have a function called increment, right? So all increment does is taking particular value x and then return x plus 1, right? So let's say I now have a list called um, my list, right? So and I have a list of